Welcome back to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people where we talk about critical issues in the blindness community. My name is Aaron Richmond, and tonight, like all other episodes, is of course copywritten by me, Aaron Richmond, and Aaron's Opinion. Thank you. You can watch us right here on YouTube, or of course, follow us on iTunes, or really anywhere you want to get a podcast. Don't forget, consider following us right here on Facebook, Twitter, comment below on YouTube, and even consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. I would appreciate the support. Telephone number to leave nasty voicemails or nice ones, or even nasty or nice text messages. 1240-681-9869. It's not my real number. And of course, Aaron's Opinion 6 at gmail.com. It's really important when you follow Aaron's Opinion to reach out to me. And someone by the name of Isaac Miller has followed me. It turns out, after doing a bit of an investigation before I pushed the record button, that not only is he the founder of the Daily Archetype, but he is the origin of the Daily Archetype.
The origin.
He joins us right now. And of course, you are welcome on this podcast anytime. Welcome. Let's get into it. So how did you get into podcasting, and tell us everything you want us to know about the Daily Archetype? Go.
Interesting. I just got interested in psychological ideas the last couple of years, and I read like 100 books, and then I was like, not just like little simple books, but like big ones, mostly audiobooks though. And then after that, I'm like, oh, I should like not just read these and figure things out, but it would also help me and others to talk to other people about it. So it started like a year and a half ago, just as a Facebook group. And a lot of the theme, I try to make it, even though I talk about kind of complicated stuff, the theme that I try to really go for is that like life's complicated, but let's make the complicated stuff practical in a way that can just improve our complicated lives. So it's kind of with the idea of like, we're all going to go through really tricky, difficult, complicated things in life. Like even the ones that we've dealt with like forever, like, going through loss of a relationship or just change in our lives and how to deal with these things. Although just the nature of Facebook and things, a lot of people don't really want to like come on and be like, hey guys, I'm having trouble with my relationship. What do you think? So it more so went just down the whole study certain psychologists and philosophers, almost like a hobby of it. So that's mainly where it has gone is, and mainly the foundation of it is Carl Jung or Jungian philosophy. And so that's really the foundation. And then when COVID started, I started doing live streams back in March, April. And then those kind of became, I don't know if I'd say popular. I guess I could say somewhat popular. And since just doing the live streams through Facebook were popular, that turned into a podcast in July. And then I put out like 40 episodes since then. So yeah, here we are.
Awesome. Well, I love this stuff,
Yeah.
Now, my first question to you, to use as we would say in the education field, when I'm not podcasting, I'm a teacher online, by the way, to use the Socratic method, or kind of to use an interesting approach with tonight's episode. What questions do you have for me as a blind podcaster? What do you really want to know? Because I think that's an interesting way to engineer this conversation. You're sighted, and of course, sighted people are welcome. But had you ever? Well, for one thing, thank you for finding out about Aaron's Opinion.
Yeah.
Did one of our mutual friends on Facebook tell you? How did you find out about me?
Oh, So let me see if I can segue through that 2 or 3 part question.
Okay, go. Segue. Okay, start. Okay, started segue. Segue. Go. Segue.
Okay. Well, so let me see. So I originally was I was interested actually in doing a podcast interviewing potentially Rachel Rebecca, the blind ENSFJ typologist.
There we go.
Yeah. So, but she's like this, so busy and interested in typecasting or whatever you call it, typing everybody.
Typology, typing as she calls it. Yes.
Yeah.
Typology.
And so far I haven't actually interviewed her, but she did a typing of me, which actually was really good. I highly recommend it for anybody who can get on her schedule. It takes like 2 or 3 weeks. She's so busy doing that, like just about every single day. Anyway, the reason that I found her, and this will start to segue, is that I was interested in this before I found her randomly through somebody else in my group. I was doing a podcast. This was like 3 weeks ago or so. And I was making the analogy of how, so like the whole thing with that is, we interact with the world through sensing, feeling, and then those are kind of have the opposites of thinking and intuition. And I was using the analogy of how it's almost like if you lose one of your senses, or if you're blind or nearly blind, for example, your other senses usually become more heightened. Just as kind of like a way to understand how the more that we become thinking, the less we become feeling, and the more that we become intuitive, the less we become sensing. That's just kind of the way that the mind works. And so actually I was kind of going to ask her about that, but I haven't had the opportunity yet. So I guess, again, to segue to your question of what I might be interested in, you and your the blind community, is how that is as far as being having perhaps your other senses heightened and operating in the world a different way that way.
Sure. So good. Yeah, and I think that I interviewed Rachel on my channel,
Right.
and then you must have found
Yeah, I saw
my
that
channel.
one.
Yeah, that's how you found me, by watching that particular video.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and then
Sure.
and I thought, he seems a little interesting, just like her, and that I thought you had an interesting natural broadcasting voice.
I appreciate it.
So
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, everybody says that. So
Mhm.
I do want to address something that you said about the senses issue being heightened.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that.
Mhm.
Everybody has their own opinions about it. My opinion is, it might be true a little bit, but it may
Mhm.
not be always true all the way.
Right.
So, and what may also be true
Mhm.
is that if you're blind, you might be able to use your hearing more effectively, but
Right.
that may
Right.
not necessarily mean that your hearing is physically better. But that's
Right.
just that's just my opinion about that.
Mhm.
But that is totally okay. That is totally fine, of course.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's well, I almost think of it, and you can may have opinions about this, but I almost think of it how like with sensing versus intuition and feeling versus thinking, it's not like someone who is more thinking they can't feel. It's that their feelings become unconscious. And then same thing like with someone who's more intuitive, it's not that they can't have the sensation, it's that becomes more unconscious. So I would think of it, and sort of to what you were just saying, that it's similar in that like me being a sighted person, I have all my senses fine, but uh, yours aren't necessarily better, but they're more in the conscious front, so to speak. If maybe that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
And it's an interesting way of describing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not given this much thought, you see.
Complicated
Because
stuff.
yeah, really complicated because when you're blind, you don't give it much thought, you don't know any
Yeah, it's
different.
just that's the way it is.
I'm sure that there are the most the best intellectual answer here is
Mm,
I'm sure that there probably are things that I am subconsciously doing,
mm,
but I'm not even aware of it. Is probably what I
right.
would say. And if you were to interview Rachel,
Mm.
um, she would. Well, I don't know what I have no idea what she would or wouldn't say,
Yeah,
but
just each
she
person
would
might
be.
look at it a little differently.
Yeah, but it's a really intriguing point that you've
Mm,
brought up. When you join after we successfully record this episode, I'm
mm,
going to send you some other stuff on privately. One of the things I'm going to
mm,
add you into is, of course, my private WhatsApp group for Aaron's Opinion, where you'll get to meet all of the guests. Most
mm,
of which are blind people like me, but some others are, of course, sighted people,
mm,
living all over the world, doing many different activities,
mm.
all walks of life. So you should definitely promote your podcast in my group and
Yeah.
ask that very question because we would have a lot of interesting responses. The other episode
Mm.
that you might want to take a play and take a listen. Did you listen to Cave by any chance?
No, I think the one
That
you did
is
with Rachel, Rebecca, and then there was one you did with Josh or somebody who had the one about starting a podcast.
yeah. Both are great episodes, no question.
Mm,
Both were great guests.
mm,
There was one that I recorded a few weeks ago, or I don't really know. Hey, my sense of time is all weeks, just weeks and days kind of fly around and blend together.
yeah,
At some
especially
point,
this year.
yeah, really, no kidding.
Mm.
I thought that was just on the New York side of the country. I didn't know that.
No, it's everywhere
I didn't
this
know the
year.
Pacific side was like that.
Yeah.
Wow, really? I thought the Pacific side was perfect or something. Yeah.
We just have nicer weather usually.
Yeah, nicer weather and all the problems that the rest of the world has, right? Exactly.
Yeah, just a
Um,
little different mix.
so you have different problems. You still have problems. You mean right?
They're just mixed up differently, presented differently.
Okay, but when whether it's presented to me or not, it's still a
Mm.
problem, right? Can we
Yeah,
can we
yeah,
can,
yeah.
can we eventually agree that no matter how you present a problem, if it's a problem, it's a problem, right?
Yeah, the all that happens is sometimes they're sort of on the back burner, and then eventually it boils over, and you got to deal with it.
Yep. Well, yeah, you should listen to the
Mm,
episode called Cave. Listen to it first. Listen or
okay.
watch it right here on the channel. So it's me and this other guy.
Mm,
He is basically the combination of a philosopher and an inventor.
mm,
And yeah, there you go. And we were
interesting.
talking about these philosophical psychological concepts. He
Mm,
has an IT company. He studied philosophy or something like that, and it was just a fascinating one. You should talk to that person in the group when you're there. I'll tell you who it is. But
sure.
talk to them about these types of things because that's a philosopher who really has a vested interest in that type of knowledge. As of course I do, but that would be a really interesting
Mm,
question to pose to him. Um,
yeah.
but I think what you said is really interesting. How
Mm,
you know we all do certain things on a level of consciousness, and we also all do things on a level of unconsciousness.
right, right.
And this really goes back into the typology thing.
Mm.
If I had known you were it wouldn't if I had known you were this much into it, I would have tried to get, although she's very busy.
Oh, yeah.
I
I mean,
would I would have tried to get if
it's
I had known, I would have tried
yeah.
to get her on the call at the same time.
Oh no, it's not a big deal. It's just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like
It's extremely interesting. Yeah.
the thing that came to my mind when you asked that question, especially, well, you asked the question to ask a question, especially, when that was kind of originally the vein in which I was thinking when I came upon you and Rachel Rebecca.
I see. I see.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So now back to your content.
yeah,
What
yeah.
have what have you been covering? What are some specific episodes, some really interesting people, really interesting topics that you've been
Hmm.
able to open up this year on your podcast?
Hmm. A lot. So it's been like 40. ish episodes. And the main thing I try to get at, though, is that we can all learn from just about anybody, and including like whatever that their beliefs might be. So I am not an astrologer or a new age person that reads tarot cards, but I have had an astrologer on a couple times, and I've had a girl on that reads tarot cards and interprets dreams. And it's not that I'm like some, fortune teller per se now because of that. Like, so sometimes having certain guests on like that, they're like, "Oh, you're like a new age person." And it's like, no, I've also had, psychologists on and psychiatrists, and I've had, all kinds of people. And I'm interested in how we can all learn from just about anybody. And I like to have people on, if I can, from different kinds of points of view for different political type dispositions and different a big diversity of
You're
opinion.
talking, you're talking too. I will tell you to be because as you can kind of tell, I'm quite a character. I'm not going to
You
say
are.
I'm I'm not going to say I'm normal. I'm not.
That's okay. And anybody
I
who
have
says that is in denial. Nobody's
that's
really normal.
that's right. That's right. Or what always gets me? Those people who say like I've never failed, I've never messed up anything. Liar, liar.
Mm,
We have so many of those people who say I'm perfect. No, you aren't. No,
yeah,
you
it's just
aren't.
a
You
it's
just
just a mythology that they tell themselves.
so with me,
Mm,
you're gonna get pretty direct, blunt responses and pretty direct, blunt answers. I'll
sure,
tell you that
it's your
um,
opinion.
I'll tell you that if you want a different opinion or a different
Mm,
philosophy or the contrary to society,
mm.
you're on the right podcast because I'm as out there as you can possibly get. What do you
Well,
want to? Yes, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say maybe that would have been a better question, since I haven't listened to more than a couple of your podcasts so far. Like, what are your I don't know, philosophical, ideological, political
Sure.
type backgrounds, briefly, as far as what you believe in, especially since it's your opinion. So what's your opinion?
Yeah, sure. My opinion is that from a philosophical point,
Mhm,
we have to understand that man is evil by nature. That we are all bad and
mhm,
evil in a philosophical sense. And
mhm,
it's up to us to gain knowledge to know to only do the right thing and to know that we live in an evil world, right?
mhm,
And that it's up to us to be educated, to work hard, and to help others, and to be kind, and to do the right thing, and
mhm,
to know that, as I've said before on this podcast, and I will tell you point blank, in this disability, in the blindness community,
mhm.
if you're talking to me, I'm going to tell you, karma's a bitch.
Yeah.
When you help someone, like you're helping me, no worries. I'm going to
Mhm,
swing around and help you. Don't
mhm.
worry. You're going to swing around and help me. Trust
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
it works. Let me just be overly clear. If someone out there in the community goes out of their way to hurt someone, especially with a disability, not
Mhm.
to worry. Karma will take care of you. Karma's
Right.
coming. So, I have a pretty direct view of society, and I do have a very negative view of society, probably because I've had to overcome a lot, right? And
Mhm,
probably because a lot of bad stuff happened. A lot of unusual things happened to me that
mhm,
have shaped my opinion. Politically, I'm as far right, conservative as you could possibly get. I had I've had two specific episodes about politics. I
mhm.
had two conservative people. One was one was a young conservative person from Portland, Oregon.
What?
Yeah,
How do they survive out there?
it was a cool episode. I don't know, play it and find out. I don't know, listen
All
to it.
right.
I don't
All
know.
right.
I forget what that now. That one I forget what that's called. Um, oh goodness, because I record so many different things.
Mm,
It's impossible for me to keep it all straight. And then I recorded one with a woman my age who runs basically a conservative think tank where
mhm,
she like does like research and does outreach, political outreach.
mhm,
So, I will also tell you that
mhm,
I'm a very open and receptive and kind person. And I'm understanding of the fact that the rest of the country and the rest of the podcast community and the rest of everybody, you probably included, probably don't agree with me, but that's great because it makes it more interesting, and it makes it easier for us to learn together. And that's
Mm,
really, the philosophy of my belief. I'm going to say it at the end of the show, but one thing that I say, and I know it to
mhm,
be true, we have to help one person today so we can help a million tomorrow. And that's
mhm.
really my philosophy. Help one today, a million tomorrow. Meaning if
Right.
you do the right thing today, you'll be helped later. The question is, how much more right do we have to do before the good thing swings back and helps us up? Well,
Mm.
who knows? Who knows? There you
Deep
go.
stuff, man.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Outside of deep stuff, man, so it sounds like you're from like Cali Valley or something, talking to me, saying me,
Oh
man.
no, I'm just it's just
It's
that
just I know it's
that's a
just a
lot. But
California thing,
no,
but what do you really? I'm just playing with you. What do you really think about my philosophy of life?
no, it's actually I'll tell you first of all what like the thing that I like about it the best is that you just own it, and that like if I ask 9 out of 10 people ish, they'll just say I am a, and they'll just name like three things like liberal, atheist, whatever. They'll just like name three or four or five things. So you have made your own, so to speak. Um, Although the tricky, I don't know what you would call it.
Are we
Ga-
getting to an Achilles heel by any chance?
no, not necessarily. I don't know. Just a quandary, a moral quandary, or a. So the thing is that everyone deals with on some level, some more than others, is the problem of good and evil. And I guess my position is everyone is evil, but also everyone is good. And it's just the matter of how that we choose to look at it and how that we choose to let out the good versus the evil. And it's tricky because it can almost then sound like moral relativism, like everybody's good and everybody's evil. But um, what happens when you realize that we're all good and evil, then it starts to escape the game of like there's a bad person, there's a good person, and that person's gonna get it and that person's gonna get like good stuff, which is largely true. But it's like, okay, sometimes I use this analogy, like if you look into um some uh so sometimes it's tricky, I guess, to I enjoy this right now that I have to start to think of how to reframe things speaking to someone from a different background. So normally I would think of how do you think of like a beautiful scene in nature? Is there something that comes to mind, or what how you think of the beauty in nature?
Yeah. Um, I have several different creatures that fascinate me,
Mm,
that I have a fixation with. I have a
right.
fixation with snakes,
Okay.
and I have a fixation with birds,
Hmm.
to which I adore both.
Mm.
Hmm.
So, okay, that's interesting to just get that perspective, because sometimes I think of the analogy of like when I talk to a sighted person, as you say, like look into like a what we might just say is like a beautiful scene in nature. That would include animals and trees and rivers and all that stuff. But actually, when you say that, uh, it we can even put it on the more individual level of like one animal. So, like if you look at one animal, and you could to some degree even just use the human body, but we'll just say one animal, whether that's any particular animal. Um, in that animal does all kinds of beautiful things, but then they will also do ugly, nasty, gross things, and they will, if they're in the wild, they will have to kill and be killed, and they will be involved in all kinds of things. And some of it you would call, horrible, that they would sometimes eat their babies and all this stuff. I say that to say that that's the way people are in our nature, is that we just are. We have all this stuff that is good and evil, but the, I guess, trick to it is to everyone has the choice to get more on that path of goodness or badness, so to speak. So it's complicated stuff, but it's fun.
I guess it's up to us all to decide to make the right choices. What I'm saying is, when you do the right thing, you're going to be helped. So you don't have to be evil. You can be good, and then you are.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. What I'm saying is, philosophically,
Yeah.
my assumption is, I assume evil over good until good is proven, because you have to prove yourself in life.
Yeah.
Right? Think of it this way. I mean, if I hadn't been recording podcasts for episodes for over a year, if I hadn't been practicing on YouTube and Zoom, and my connections in the blindness community, talking to Rachel, all these people all over the world, I mean, philosophically, would you have come onto this podcast? Well, maybe not, right? So
Probably not, and especially,
right.
or on that same note, if you were like making podcasts about torturing people or animals or making bombs, it's you could be making, people could be making horrible, cruel kind of shows, but you're making a good and interesting show, so that changes it.
Well, good. Although you're kind of comparing, it's kind of hard to compare someone doing, evil things on a podcast.
Yeah. I'm just saying
no, but that's
yeah.
how I am too. I mean, I totally get the sarcasm, but yeah, it's hard to compare though, because if you're just doing evil things, then I'm going to ignore that evil. But if you're doing helpful things, I'm going to listen. So it's you're right. And with podcasting, it's a little different. If you're doing the wrong thing, yeah, I'm going to the next episode. I'm not spending my time. If you're here to help, I'm here to help. And that's the life lesson, I think, out of all of it. Yeah. Definitely. Okay, well, you've had some interesting people. What about some other interesting things that you've done on your show?
So let me see. I guess what comes to mind there is lately, the last couple months, I've had two main recurring guests. One is Dr. Lahab Al-Samarrai, who's sort of this.
First of all, is the person's last name really Samurai?
It's Al-Samarrai. Samurai. I don't know.
Al-Samarrai. Okay,
he's originally from Baghdad, and
you know what? Okay, it might be, and it's not my place to say it, but it might be It could be Al-Samari, maybe.
It could be, but I don't know. He's lived here.
Well, I mean, if he said it Al-Samarrai, it's Al-Samarrai. But that's still a really cool name.
He says it that way, but it might be that he's trying to, be adapted to Western culture. So it might be Al-Samarrai or something along those lines. And sometimes he has more of an accent, sometimes he doesn't. But anyway, okay, and his first name is Lahab. His first name is Lahab, and so sometimes I think usually people just call him Dr. Lahab. So whatever, that's the guy. He's been in this kind of, and we kind of came together because he's got a different, more advanced background in these things, but we have a very similar vision in that his background is in Jungian psychology, and he's been a Jungian counselor for 20-something years and all those kind of things. And he's starting a new therapy. He calls it Jungian advanced motor processing, but what it's about. It's basically a guided meditation with talk therapy and affirmations and a couple other things to kind of like fast track some of these results that normally takes a lot longer to get through therapy. So he's been a recurring guest, and and what we've done is we've largely been talking about like Jungian theory and that type of thing lately. And then I've also had Boonham, who has her own podcast, and she's sort of like a self-taught philosopher. But the reason that I kind of like having those two as main recurring guests, and we'll see how the scheduling all pans out over the next year coming up and everything, but it's because I like having people from like all different levels, and that's because then what happens is like someone like Dr. Lahab Al-Samara, who's very, advanced, doing this for decades. He's not trying to be all ivory tower, but it can kind of be that way, just because that's how it goes. And so I kind of try to bring that down to earth. And then, Boone, for example, she's very smart and good at all the stuff that she does, but she's very, casual and down to earth. And so that's really kind of like what I'm getting at, is taking these kind of super complicated things and, bring it down to earth that you can apply to your day-to-day life and your day-to-day relationships and everything.
Those two people, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have them right here on Aaron's Opinion. I would be honored to have both of them on, obviously separate episodes, but both of those people are welcome on this show, because I love including the world, and I have all the continents. So anyone who's from a different background, different perspective, different walk of life, they are welcome on this channel. So So we can do that, as we say, behind the stage after the show, all of that. But I would love to be put in touch with those people if you want, and I'd love to have that type of philosophy on this show. I think it's really beneficial. I think it's really beneficial for the blindness community, because blind people, and most people, but many blind people, just simply ask why. So when people ask why, I think we should learn about it and understand the answers. And I think that talking to experts like that would really maybe help to clear up some stuff. What has been the greatest lesson that either one of those people has taught you by you having the privilege to interview them?
Well, it's, let me see. I'd have to look, but each of those I have, and this is kind of the cool thing about podcasting, compared to other things you might get involved in, is I've developed a little bit of a friendship with those two, separately. And so, and which is cool because I wouldn't have otherwise, if I was just living life as normal. And it's been something that has definitely been supportive this year, as things have been all kind of turned upside down. And it's been something that, just getting there. Well, I was going to say too on that, it's just that sometimes it's tough to, really get into it in an hour or even a 2-hour interview. You can just kind of like get a good introduction in that time. But these I've had on, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 times each now, I think. And that sort of recurringness of it kind of helps get the depth of an understanding of a person, especially when we're trying to have like similar, goals and aspirations and things that we're trying to accomplish together. So yeah, we get kind of deep into these ideas, and it's along those same lines of it kind of makes me think back to what we're talking about a little bit ago, is the unconscious, because that's one of the main themes in all of these things, is how we most of our lives and most of the things going on in the world are unconscious, but we often don't think about that or talk about it so much, because we're just limited by our consciousness. But the unconscious world is kind of where most of it's at, and things go in and out of the consciousness and unconsciousness. And so, yeah, through them, I've learned a lot about the unconscious, which is kind of like a sort of recurring theme in different ways. And then also just different background. What I enjoy too, like I said, having a variety of guests is, I would never try to say like force a business or any university of like, hey, you have to have like, this kind of, I don't know, it might be a little bit different with people with disabilities, but people of, a lot of businesses and universities, they get all these restrictions on like, you can't hire a person from this race until you interview people from all the other races, and they have all this like diversity and inclusion rules, and that's fine, but I think really it's better when it happens organically, and people should just enjoy, like I enjoy, I can tell you enjoy having a diversity of views and a diversity of opinions. So that's what I've enjoyed from those guests and my guests in general.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's really important to have, as a podcaster, number one, as I've said before, you have to know your audience, your audience, your audience. After that, you have to understand that your audience is looking and expecting you to include everyone else. The truth of the matter is, I'm the type of person that wants to include you. So I'm going to. But I'm also the type of person who understands that as a podcaster and content creator, we have to include everyone else. It's kind of what you have to do. If you can't include people, well, then it's like you can't really, have a following, have a show, you can't really produce a product for people without already including everyone else. It's kind of a package deal, but it's what I want. It's what I believe and what I want to do on this show.
Yeah, you're right. And it's even a level beyond that where having the more diversity that's involved, and especially if it's done naturally and not forced, at least in my opinion, but the more that there is, it just brings about more, I guess, to kind of put it in terms that I use sometimes with these kind of guesses, it brings about more consciousness, more, and maybe a more common term would just be more awareness, but just like a more full way to look at the world.
Of course, it adds more sticks to the fire of life. Sure. Yeah. Definitely it does. It does. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good. Now, we all have, day jobs. The other mystery with us YouTubers and podcasters is this your full-time job? A lot of people would ask. No, because podcasting really cannot be, unless you're some of the very special people. I don't name drop, but unless you're them, for most of us in the community, podcasting is our hobby. So how do you spend your time when you are not podcasting or being the admin for the Daily Archetype? How do you spend time? Yeah.
So my background professionally has been in financial services, and what I've been trying to do the last couple of years is transition from sort of that career to something more involved in like the kind of things that we're talking about here: psychology, philosophy, talking to people, these kind of things. So what I'm trying to do now, launching here in the next few weeks, is to where that business will be more of just like online, so I can be more hands off and focus on things, with the podcast and education and these type of things. And then I also do a little bit of like the gig economy. I've had Airbnbs. I've had did a little bit of Uber and DoorDash and stuff. But the reason that stuff is interesting, to me, not to necessarily do it full time, is I also want to help people potentially learn to do those type of things, because that's where a lot of the future is, not just in driving or Airbnb and that type of thing. But in the coming years, more and more things are going to be in those type of platforms. And so the world will have to adapt, starting with each individual as much as they can. I mean, not completely. There'll be some people that if they can't or don't want to go on those platforms, that's fine. But that's the strange world we're in. It's constantly changing, and especially with the information age and everything.
And of course, I have a great question.
Sure.
You know, there are some characters that get into Ubers.
Sure.
Definitely some personas. All right.
Okay.
This podcast, by the way, as you know, is of course, Isaac. You know that this podcast is explicit. Talk from the bottom of your heart, man. Who was your craziest?
Oh, I don't do it full time, but I have in the.
Well, that's okay. Even part time, you can get crazy. So,
yeah, I've had some.
Try not to avoid the question. Who was your craziest?
No, I'm not avoiding the question. But to, I'm gonna take a drink first. Okay. So I've never told this one recorded, but I had one guy, picked him up at a strip club. And yeah, it's already great, huh? Just by picking him up. And I think he was actually getting kicked out because he was a little inebriated, intoxicated, whatever. And so he changed where he wanted to go pretty quick because I guess he originally was going to go home. And then he changed his mind. He wanted to go to his office. And this was like in the middle of the night, like 12 or 1 o'clock. So I was like, okay, cool. Just, tell me how to get there. And he's really grateful and surprised that I could figure out how to communicate with him, which was just it's almost like a skill that I guess you develop after a little while doing it, is communicating with the intoxicated. So yeah, I developed the skill a little bit. So I guess it's kind of like another language that I learned, although I don't know other languages fluently. I can speak drunk person even when I'm not one of them. So anyway, he was really grateful for that, and he gave me right then, only halfway there, he gave me a $100 bill for a tip.
Well, okay, well that's fine then. You know what? Fine, you can be drunk if you're given $100. Like,
yeah. And he was good. A little difficult to communicate with, but I knew the language. So anyway, we get him to his office, and which again is weird because it's the middle of the night, and it's just like a little office building, and it's not like there's anything else going on. And so he's like, "Come in with me."
No, oh God, strap yourself in. This is where it gets crazy. Okay.
Well, it could have.
Maybe. You mean you didn't go in?
I was going to, or it crossed my mind, but strap yourself in. You'll see why not. So he's like, "Come in with me," and I was planning, to work in another hour or two and call it a night. Or maybe sometimes I've hung out with people, like nothing really exciting came out of that, but it's like no big deal. But if I'm going to hang out with somebody, then there's got to be, I guess, more draw than just like the blank invitation. So anyway, he says, "Come in with me." And so I'm like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Just come on in." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. What do you want to do? What's going on in there?" And he's like, "Well, you're going to love it. You're going to love it." So then finally I'm like, "Well, just tell me what it is." And so he's like, "Well, I'll set you up with some really nice fat lines." Anyway, so he's talking about cocaine.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "Oh, you're offering me cocaine? That sounds great, and I do appreciate the offer, especially because that's hard to get. I mean, not that I'm looking for cocaine, but that's a nice offer." But I say, "You're a big guy. I think you're not going to overdose, but you have fun with that. I'm going to keep working." And yeah, I was offered drugs a number of times I don't think I ever took them. No, but never took them.
Wait,
But
wait. Okay, wait.
what?
You had to pause and you had to think. Okay, let's just clear. Okay, we're on the
Hmm.
record now. Did you ever take the drugs? Okay.
No, not
Okay, no, okay,
not in
we
those
have
settings.
that.
No, no.
Okay, no, okay, not in those. Okay, well, we don't want to dig too far down the rabbit hole here. Not in
Sure,
those
sure.
settings. You see,
Maybe
see,
not today, but
maybe not. See, I can totally rip guests apart because I really listen. I listen to every word you say and really
mm-hmm.
analyze it. You know, that's kind of that's creepy. That's crazy. But then
Mm.
there's something that's kind of like sickeningly classy about it too. There's something that's like
Yeah, sickeningly classy.
there's
That's
something
an
that's got
interesting. Yeah.
it's kind of like he was probably, I mean, who knows? You know, hopefully he's better. Hopefully he's not still, using drugs, but he probably had like a big heart. Like he probably it seems like he
Oh yeah.
had like good and seems like he had some good in him, is how I would have
Yeah.
interpreted that. Like cuz if he was going to
Yeah.
rob you or
I don't
hurt
think
you,
he's like a horrible person. He was
no.
just, and he's
No.
probably not even addicted to cocaine. He's just having
He was
fun.
probably just having some fun, being drunk and just clowning around. Probably that's what it sounds
Yeah.
like to me.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
just having fun and invited me in on it, and I appreciate that. But wasn't feeling like the cocaine path that night. Life
All
goes
right.
on.
All right. Well,
Maybe if he had invited me before the strip club to go into the strip club with him, that would have been a different story. But at the end of the night, when he's like ready to pass out and uh, no strippers around, it's a little different.
yeah, I don't know what's scarier. Yeah, I don't know which one would be more intimidating. Him inviting you. I don't know, guys. What do you guys think at home? Which would have been
Yeah,
more
put that down in
intimidating?
the comments.
Yeah, guys,
What?
comment below. At some point, I'm going to get some comments on this thing. I don't get many comments. Comment below.
Mm,
Okay, guys, which is scarier? You're an Uber driver, and the guy wants you to go into the strip club, probably maybe to use drugs, but of course you don't know, and of course we aren't judging, right? Or you drive him home, and he offers you drugs at his house. Okay, which
or
which
office in this
or office
case.
in that case, which is scarier? I don't know, but I'm really glad that you were okay. In all seriousness, there have been some crazy passengers who've like pulled guns on drivers and stabbed
Mm.
drivers. So I mean, hey, you know what? At least he pulled $100 on you. You know,
Yeah, I've
there's
never had
there's
any
worth
real violence or
there.
anything like that.
You know what? I think in the bottom of my heart, I think that was secretly a good person deep down. It's
Oh
silly,
yeah.
just
Well, and that's
maybe
kind of like,
maybe a little misled, maybe had
well, that's kind of to
yeah.
like our discussion earlier
Yeah.
that I feel like everyone's evil, but also everyone's good. So, and sometimes you'll
See,
see a little bit of
here's
both.
how exactly, and this is a good one to mull over.
Mm,
Here's how I devoured it and really digested that meal. Look,
mm.
if he was evil, he would have killed you, but he didn't.
I yeah,
So
I
he's good.
guess.
So he's good. I guess. I don't know. I would have wanted to think that
Although
if he
that's not
was.
much of a litmus test. The evil people are just the ones that don't kill.
Well, no, but in this case, dealing in that circumstance, because there've been stories where the driver's been driving around and they get stabbed or they're somehow encouraged to use drugs, in the car, or they deal with it in the car, and then something even worse happens. So, yeah,
Eh,
that's that
yeah,
guy. That
it's
guy
been
was.
some adventures, but
There's been some now. What about the other one? No, that person deep down, good soul deep down.
mm,
Hopefully he's cleaned his life up. Probably has. I hope that the karma of this show helps. So
yeah.
you never know. You never know.
Yeah, it's been
Okay,
over
no,
a year.
okay, he's good. Let's
Yeah,
just
he's good.
let's just say he's fine. You
He's
never know. It
great.
might it,
Yeah,
it, it might help him. You know.
sure.
Hey, if you're listening out there, comment below.
Yeah.
It's for your help.
Comment below. Tell us you got your life together.
Yeah, you know what? That would be really cool. So think about how cool that would be
It'd
if
be
he
super
really did
cool.
listen and commented below. Yeah, I remember that guy who didn't take $100 in drugs from me.
No, I took $100, just not the drugs.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would say, yeah, I kind of remember the guy who took $100 and still wouldn't take drugs. He's a good guy.
Yeah. I don't know if I mean, he probably had leftovers from the strippers, but I don't know if he was expecting like I would want to go in with him by
Yeah, who knows?
flashing $100, but
Who knows, man? Who knows? That's
who
crazy.
knows?
And then there's some characters that stay in Airbnbs too.
Hmm.
Who was your most difficult or your most unusual person
Mm,
who ever came in your
wow.
Airbnb?
Depends. There's like levels to it. Okay, I will
Did
say.
someone turn one of your Airbnbs into a strip club?
Mm, well, the thing is like, yeah, if that goes on and they clean up after themselves, then I'm none the wiser. So that
Right.
could have happened on a number of occasions. Uh, but there, hmm, boy, I don't know how deep we want to go down this.
As
I will say that
as deep
more
as I
than
want you to go all the way, as deep as you
well,
possibly can dig
the
or
the
want
thing
to.
the thing is first of all that like the vast majority, I don't know if I'd say somewhere between 9 and 10 and 99 out of 100 are great
Yeah.
guests and all that, but you do get 1 out of 100 ish that are not so great. Although my biggest thing, like with that, it's never been that bad, other than just people leave a mess or break something, and that's life. You're expecting that goes on. But I did have some. Uh, I had a couple really bad employees working for me, as far as my cleaners. They were a couple guys that I was trying to really help kind of get their lives together. They were like trying to clean up and have things together and all that, and I gave them this like part-time job cleaning up and everything. Anyway, so they figured out legally or whatever that if they could barricade themselves into one of my places, that they, since I gave them keys, just to clean, that I couldn't like get them kicked out. Like they could just like barricade themselves in and just kind of like live there or whatever. And that was kind of their plan, and it was kind of working because I couldn't get them out for a couple of days. But what had happened was, when I was trying to like figure this out, there were people that would go in and try to talk to them because they were selling the furniture and the appliances too. Yeah. And that's when, because it was to that level and I could show the police that's when they're like, oh, these guys aren't just living there, they're selling everything and stealing everything out from it. Then they were able to make them give up the keys. And yeah, that's the worst there.
That's hilarious. That's annoying and hilarious. Of course,
Yeah,
see
it
now
was. Yeah,
there's a lot of approaches here. There's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
ways you could have there's a lot of ways you could have solved that.
Mm.
You could have put on a disguise and
Uh,
gone in and bought your own furniture.
um, yeah. I guess that would have been I never thought of that. Yeah, I never think of these disguise ideas, or get
See,
someone else. It was kind of
so
like
you get
in the moment.
you get a disguise. Well, no, and then the other
See, I
person.
should have asked you for your opinion a year or a
You
couple
should
years
have.
ago, whenever that was.
Why weren't you talking to Aaron's opinion a year ago? I would have had
Oh,
some guy.
actually, that was about 2 years ago. So I don't know if you had your opinion up at that time.
It
Otherwise, I
wasn't. It
I
wasn't.
would have
See,
been
what I
looking
would have
for it.
done is
Like,
I would have
where's
hired.
Aaron? I need Aaron's opinion on
I would
this.
have hired. So what I would have done is I would have hired a friend to show up with me. Okay, I'll put on the disguise part, right?
Okay.
I would have been you. I would have put on the disguise, pose as a buyer to buy back my own furniture. Okay, now when the transaction goes on, you get your friend from next door to come behind to come also to come in, come from outside of the apartment or whatever it is and start breaking the windows. So they get all distracted with
Hmm.
the broken windows everywhere, and then I don't know, and then you just pay for it yourself because it's your
I
own
don't know if I
furniture.
would have had to go as far as breaking windows. I think once I was inside, I could have just
Well, no. I mean, what I'm saying is
changed the lock or something.
you hire someone else, some other friend to show up and break your own windows while you're buying your own furniture.
I don't know if I would have had to go that far. Probably once I was inside, I could have changed the lock somehow or something. But anyway, this is kind of why that I feel like I can help people through some of these things, and then which is actually another sort of business that I hope to get going here in the next few weeks, is to help people, which I mentioned just briefly, get into gig economy type things not be afraid of these kind of situations because they're very rare, and even in the most extreme situations, people can handle it. But also I can do it, but it's just not where I want to put all my, time and energy right now. I'm more interested in this kind of stuff.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. And that's why I just love podcasting. I just love
Mhm.
producing these episodes because it's like every time I have a conversation that I've never had that conversation with, someone you taking $100 and then getting offered drugs. I've never had that, or the guys locking the thieves.
Mm.
Give them credit. It's clever. Lock yourself in the person's place and then sell out the furniture and take the money and run, I
Yeah,
guess.
there's a lot to it. Like I think
It's clever.
one of them I think went to jail for a little bit, and then
Yeah.
he I think he learned that in jail, that it's like somebody told him that, and then which is kind of how what helped is then one of them had an arrest warrant. So uh,
Oh, well,
anyway,
but I mean, but as far as Airbnb goes,
mm,
though, so I mean, shouldn't they keep, and I'm sure they secretly do, shouldn't they keep some sort of a record of people on the platform who potentially have warrants? I mean, is that even allowed? Can you even tell the record if someone has like a, I mean, no, I mean,
yeah.
let's
Well,
be
although
serious. Like
this was my
if someone has like a
employees.
serious, if someone has like a serious criminal record, like you don't necessarily want them working for you, right? I mean.
Well, I mean, this was my employees
Right.
that worked for me directly. However, so I'm not sure about that with the Airbnb platform. Although with the thing with things like Uber and Lyft is they do pretty strict background checks for the drivers, although the passengers could be anybody. So that's that.
That is interesting.
Mm,
One final question. If
sure.
you can ask me, one question to really make me sweat, what do you really want to ask?
See, now you like double put me on the spot because
It's the whole
I
point. That's why it's a great podcast.
well,
In my opinion.
because I was somewhat prepared with the sort of questioning that I went into earlier, and now you took that away from me. So now I'm
I
not
know.
prepared with that. So you I guess what it was is that you knew I probably saw at least one or two of your episodes, so I would be prepared for that. So you disarmed my one question, and now I
Actually,
have to have another.
most guests don't watch many guests don't watch. Some do. I
Mm,
appreciate it when they do, but a lot of times you get people who've never seen any of my content, which is it's not unheard of either way.
okay. Let me see. So. Oh, I was kind of thinking of this, but it was hard to figure out how to put it into words. And it's somewhat off of the questioning or things we were talking about a little bit earlier, which is with the disability,
Yeah.
there are probably with the advantages that come, or in some ways, a better way to look at the world.
Sure.
And so, and along those same lines, I know that the way that you think and talk about your podcast and your opinion is to uh, help others. So, if you could somehow magically give the gift of some gift that you have as being something that you get from this more specialized perspective, I guess we'll say,
Yeah.
what would be that gift of perspective that you
Oh,
might
that's
give to the
that's
world?
a that's the absolutely magnificent way to end, and a magnificent question.
All right. I'm glad I figured out how
Wow.
to ask it.
Well, you know what? You may not have asked it perfectly, but
Sure.
I'm a kind person who understands what you were digging at there. Really, you want to
Good.
know what gift or what trait or what tool from the
Mhm.
toolbox of podcasting would I give to someone else and say, here, you want to get started? Here's a tool that I'm going to give you. That's what you want to know.
Mhm.
The tool that I would
Especially
give,
from your unique perspective.
well, from my unique perspective, you have to be an active listener who's
Mhm.
willing to improve,
Mhm.
willing to accept criticism, and
Mhm.
willing to have a great time. And if
Mhm.
you can do those three things, then you should be a podcaster.
Cool. Yeah, I'd say everybody should,
No,
if at
everybody
all
shouldn't.
possible.
Everybody shouldn't, because some people sometimes it's not a good thing. But that was an
Mm.
absolutely magnificent question, and you
Mm.
are a magnificent guest. Um,
You're a
so God,
magnificent host.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And of course, you should know that you are always welcome on this show. And
Mhm.
mostly since I want to know more crazy stories from you,
Yeah.
trust me, we're going to get them. Oh, we haven't even gotten, I guarantee you guys, we haven't even gotten to we're just touching the tip of the iceberg with this guy and his Uber stories.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
I'll wear you down eventually.
Mhm.
We'll get to the bottom of this eventually. So if someone wants to get in touch with you personally, whether it's about your podcast, your job, your work, uh, whether they want to get in your Uber and try to get you to use
Mhm.
drugs, how would they reach out to
uh,
you?
I'm not Ubering these days, so I don't know. The best thing, I guess, I have. There's not a lot to it right now, but I have dailyarchetype.com,
Okay,
um,
dailyarchetype.com. All right, all right.
which mainly links to the podcast, which
How
you
about
can get
this?
on
I tell
all
you what,
podcast platforms.
I'll put the YouTube. I forget. Did you send me your YouTube link? Or I think so.
I'm not. Well, I think you just found my YouTube link, but mainly I use YouTube, but I'm mainly on the podcast platforms, Spotify and iTunes and all that.
Okay, I tell you what. We'll put his link in the description. If you can message me the link that you want me to put in the description, I'll put it in there, and you
Sure,
guys can go check him out that way. All right,
sure.
that works for me. Isaac Miller, the Daily Archetype. Whew,
Woo! That was a
that
wild
was a
ride.
that was wild. All right, guys. I'm Aaron Richmond. This was Aaron's Opinion podcast for blind people, where we definitely talked about issues in the blindness community, Uber community, and maybe some bad ideas if in case you wanted to be a thief and try to work for someone in an
Yeah.
Airbnb. For further information, Aaron's Opinion 6 at gmail.com. 1240-681-9869. All right. Don't forget to follow right here on Facebook, Twitter, comment below on YouTube, even consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page. As one of my other buddies in the podcast and broadcasting world says, and it's also true, as I said earlier before, karma's a bitch. That's kind of a harsh thing to say. A really nice thing to say. A friend is the nicest thing you can have and the nicest thing you can ever be. Thanks so much, everybody. I wish you all very good health. Help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.